Hi everyone, so this is the same example that you saw in your PowerPoint slides. So you can print this out and please take notes on it so that you have a good idea of what's going on. Okay, so years of education is our variable, that's x. We have 11, 8, 12, 9, and 10. Then the next column over is x minus x bar. I'm using x bar instead of the symbol for the mean simply because I can't insert symbols into Excel. At least I don't know how to do it yet. So, and then the column after that is x minus x bar squared. So I'm going to do this in Excel so you guys can see how essentially how it works. This is going to effectively be my whiteboard. So first things first, in order to get the standard deviation and variance, we need to find the mean. So we effectively need to take the sum of these three things, or these five things, right, and then divide by the number of cases, which is 5. So I'm going to do that by going, I'm doing this in Excel, so pardon the formulas. I'm going to go sum these 5 numbers, then I'm going to divide by 5. So that gives us a mean of 10. I'll put it in bold. So the next thing we need to do is effectively take the score of x minus the mean. So for our first one, we've got a score of 11, and we're going to subtract 10 from it. Let me get my mouse out of the way. So that gives us 1. Our next score is 8, so we take 8 minus 10. That gives us negative 2. Now some of you might be tempted to flip this around and go 10 minus 8 to get rid of the negative number, but don't do it, and I'll show you why in a second. Now we've got 12 minus 10. Now we've got 9 minus 10 for negative 1, and then 10 minus 10 is 0. So remember when I started talking about the average deviation from the mean, and I showed you that equation called d bar? So if I was to add this column up, right, these things right here, we'd effectively get the answer for d bar. But if you look down at the bottom down here, it says the average is 0, the count is 5, and the sum of the selected cells is 0. So when we add these things up, and I'll actually do it in the equation form, when we add these things up, when we sum all these 5 scores, we get 0. That's a good thing, actually. This is a great way to check your work, especially when I've asked you to find the mean. If your deviation from the mean, when you add all those deviations up, if they don't add to 0, then you've probably calculated the mean wrong. Now, just like rounding, occasionally you can be a little off from 0. That's okay, just as long as it's not drastically off. Okay? So the next thing you want to do is we want to take this score and we want to square it. So we want to take our deviation from the mean, or the score minus the mean, and square it. So we're going to go 1 times 1. That's squared. Then we'll go negative 2 times negative 2, which is effectively squaring it. We end up with 4. Now, just in case you guys forgot, and I know that some people, they hit their math class the minute they walk out the door and like everything leaks out their ear. Just remember that when you square negative numbers, you end up with a positive number, and that's exactly what we want. That's why we're doing it, so we actually don't end up with deviations from the mean turning out to be 0 when we add them all up. So remember, a negative times a negative number is positive. So 2 times 2 is 4, and negative 1 times negative 1 is 1, and 0 times 0 is 0. I'm not going to bother writing the equation for that. So we've got all of our square deviations from the mean. Now we need to add these guys up. So, now we add up 1 plus 4 plus 4 plus 1 plus 0, 4, 10. So this is the top part of the formula. So in order to get the variance, our next thing that we want to do is take 10. We want to divide it by n minus 1, or 5, because the n is 5, minus 1. So if I do that, stop it, go away, there we go. So if I do that in equation form, it's going to be 10 minus 4, right? And we end up with a variance of 2.5. Now, if we want to get the standard deviation, once we have the variance, it's a piece of cake. So we take the square root of 2.5, and we've got the standard deviation. So in Excel, that's square root 2.5 pow. And there's our standard deviation. So we have we have a variance of 2.5 and a standard deviation of 1.58. And what the standard deviation tells us is effectively the average deviation from the mean, right? So on average, scores are about 1.58 points away from the mean. And there it is.